I want to ask you about this poll that I saw over the weekend. According to CNBC, these are the 10 worst states to live in. I was looking at what were some of the criteria.
Now, check out this recent list. 650 CEOs were polled, and they rated the best states in which to do business. The top 10, including Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, are Republican. They're run by Republicans, except Virginia, which is at number 10, and North Carolina, kind of a purple state, at number 5. So money and people, resources, are pouring into red states.
Trump's favorite news network loved to fearmonger about life in blue states. You know, New York is crime-ridden, even though it looks like the Sesame Street these days. LA is just trash-filled. It's a living nightmare. But when faced with the reality of which states are actually the worst to live in, they freak out.
So how do the socialists brush this off? Well, they do so either by ignoring it or distorting the data, or with a little help from their friends. This CNBC report just comes out. They listed the 10 worst states to live in for 2026. All the states on this list, okay, Trump won. Every state except Georgia in 2020. And the list included 4 of the top 10 states for business. How does that make any sense? Well, they had kind of a weird calculus there, but this is obviously a blatant effort to dismiss and denigrate more conservative states. But it's really nothing new.
Fox News host Laura Ingraham got upset about a CNBC ranking of the 10 worst states to live in, and she believes she's identified something extremely suspicious about the results. She said that the top 10, including the likes of Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia, are all Republican, before going on to complain that CNBC's 10 lowest ranked states were all states that Donald Trump also won. She's so close to getting it.
Sean, you also heard the president make claims that electronic voting machines are vulnerable and easily compromised. Fox News has not seen that evidence yet, is not in a position to evaluate the accuracy of the president's statements and claims at this time.
Well, first of all, this was from CNBC, right? You know, the network best known for stock tickers and whether or not CEOs are making enough money. Yeah, this is the network that Ingraham thinks constructed some elaborate statistical conspiracy against Republicans. But let's go ahead and look at what the rankings actually measured, right? Because this is where the argument becomes slightly more inconvenient for her and the rest of the MAGA contingent. CNBC's 10 bottom states ranked for quality of life, while Tennessee, Texas, Indiana, Louisiana, Georgia, Utah, Missouri, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. All 10 have Republican governors, Republican-controlled legislators, and all 10, voted for Donald Trump in 2024. But CNBC did not simply ask its staff to go ahead and find states that will annoy Laura Ingraham the most. They evaluated factors including healthcare access, crime rates, air quality, worker protections, reproductive rights, civil rights, and inclusivity.
CNBC is facing scrutiny following the release of its annual quality of life rankings. The outlet named only Republican-led states among the nation's 10 worst places to live, despite U.S. Census data reporting that many of those states are actually gaining residents. Yes, gaining. CNBC ranked this list according to crime rates, air quality, healthcare access, worker protections, and civil rights laws. Tennessee, Texas, Indiana, Louisiana, my home state of Georgia, Utah, Missouri, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Arkansas all made this list. CNBC cites that Tennessee is the worst state to live in due to their bathroom law, which requires transgender people to use the bathroom designated for their sex assigned at birth. They also found it so unsettling that the Governor Bill Lee designated June Nuclear Family Month. In a census conducted by the New York Times from 2020 to 2025, blue-ridden states like California, New York, and Illinois lost between 76,000 to 172,000 residents, while thriving red states gained between 700,000 to 2 million. Alex Salvi, I will not have it. Georgia and Texas and Alabama, I can vouch for those. Those are great places to live. And I think they're kind of the heartland of the United States. And I think CNBC got it all wrong here. And I mean, even the numbers we just all show it.
Yeah. I mentioned the type of person you have to be to decide where you're living based on what type of bathroom policy they have in that state, not your taxes, your mortgage, anything like that. It speaks to a little bit of a disconnect because, as you said, not only are people going to these states, but they're going there in such large numbers that it's actually shaping the electoral map. The next census, I mean, a lot of these states are going to get more representation to the point where Democrats can't even win just by going through the Rust Belt state or the Bible Belts as they used to. You had to kind of pick one strategy or another. Democrats are in a lot of trouble based on how many people are leaving New York and California in particular.
And when Ingraham provided her evidence to the contrary, she cited a survey of roughly 650 corporate executives ranking states such as Texas, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina highly for business friendliness. So let me get that straight. Because CEOs like a place for favorable business conditions, that means it's best to live in? Or is it best because it means there are more impoverished people there who can't afford healthcare that they can exploit for below minimum salary? Yeah, favorable conditions for businesses does not translate and demonstrate that residents have superior healthcare, longer lives, cleaner air, or safer workplace practices. In fact, the actual data gives CNBC's conclusion considerable support. Take Texas, for instance. The latest census confirmed they were the highest uninsured state in the country back in 2024. Their uninsured rate was 21.6%, the highest in the country. That's more than 1 in 5 working age adults without health insurance. Now, Fox News may find counting suspicious when the result is unfavorable, but it remains one of the traditional foundations of mathematics.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So tonight was technically the kickoff of America 250. And I think a lot of people feel two realities right now. One, pride in being an American, pride in being in this great country. And the other reality is watching the president of the United States essentially make money from this celebration, make it about himself, help benefit people who owe him favors. How do you but how do you think about these two realities?
Well, I think it's a call to action for patriotic Americans to recognize that at the 250th anniversary of our country's founding in rejection of kingdom and monarchy, we have these events being hijacked by the narcissism of the president who styles himself most like a king. And it wouldn't be a Trump event without no-bid contracts and the sale of access. Corruption is par for the course at this point. I think the Trump show has jumped the shark. I don't think many people are tuning in because he's lost it. But more importantly, what we're seeing is how destabilized he is by his global humiliation in the Middle East, which he cannot deny or lie away. His approval rating sits at 34%, while Americans pay more than ever for groceries and healthcare and rent. And he's out here building a monument to himself and adorning his office in gold trim while, because of his actions, cancer patients face the loss of their health insurance. He has cemented his place in history in disgrace. And now our job as patriotic Americans inspired by the legacy of our founding is to marshal all of our passion and resources and energy to restoring checks and balances this fall, because we won't get another chance at this. And this race in Georgia will be decisive. I am the only incumbent Democratic senator running for re-election in a state that Donald Trump won. They will spend hundreds of millions of dollars to try to unseat me. And I'm asking folks to visit electjohn.com to support my effort.
And Texas is not alone here. Many of the states near the bottom of quality of life rankings are concentrated in regions with comparatively poor healthcare outcomes. The CDC's latest state life expectancy table showed that states with some of the lowest life expectancies are heavily concentrated in the South. But again, those pesky facts, they have to argue with them. The report specifically identifies Tennessee, Alabama, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma among that lower performing regional cluster. Again, that doesn't mean that every person living in those states is unhealthy or unhappy. It means that the population level outcomes are worse. The political pattern in the bottom 10 is also unavoidable. Every one of those states is under unified Republican government. But all you hear from Republicans is constant fear-mongering about how blue states are so terrible and crime-ridden, etc., while routinely advertising red states as proof that conservative governance works.
Yeah, and more than a modicum of progress in California. Big news earlier today, some of the new statistics released, like the lowest crime in generations and generations. Talk to us about what a big deal this announcement was for those who haven't heard it.
You know, I think it was, I'm really proud of the data that just came out. I mean, the lowest homicides in recorded history in California. Time for updated talking points on all of those with California derangement syndrome. The lowest homicide rate since 1966, maybe much lower than prior to 66. It's just the modern data collection was 1966. Violent crime last year down another 10.2% in every category: property, crimes, robberies, etc., below pre-2019 levels, and double-digit decreases in 2025. And by the way, paint a picture in some of the other states in a moment, but it was a few years ago. I think I showed up and with you, and I talked about the fact, and it wasn't particularly popular, that I went on Truth Social, that I opened the first account I think any Democratic governor had opened on Truth Social. And people said, well, they were a little offended. Why are you doing that? I said, because I was so frustrated on this narrative around crime and violence that the Democratic Party was losing it to a party that consistently was failing on this issue, not rhetorically, not perception, but in reality. 8 of the top 10 murder states. It was my first post on Truth Social. Was 8 out of the top 10 murder states in America are from red states. And I asked a simple question: what are the policies leading to such carnage? And the right wing went crazy, Fox went crazy, but no one could deny the facts. And the fact remains, in most of these blue states, across the spectrum of issues, not just on the issues of crime and violence, we outperform these red states, but we don't in terms of public opinion. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come back and highlight California's receipts on this across the spectrum. But I also want to make the case that the Democratic Party, all of us, have a role and responsibility to socialize not just what's happening in California, but across the nation, and point out the fact that states like Texas have significantly higher homicide rates than California, property crime rates that are higher than the state of California. I was just looking at the numbers that came out today from the FBI in Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee. Tennessee has 24% higher rates of homicides in the state of California. Why we are not focusing on that as they're focusing on us is an issue that has to be addressed in our party.
But when a ranking evaluates the human consequences of those governing choices, suddenly the ranking system is rigged. How very Trumpian.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.